The silent death. The morning mist clung to the crystal forests of Kepler 442b as Dr. Elena Vasquez stepped out of her research pod. She breathed in the sweet air of Harmony Station, humanity's most successful agricultural colony beyond the solar system. The purple-leafed trees swayed gently in the alien breeze, their crystalline bark catching the orange light of the system's twin suns. This world had been humanity's greatest discovery. A planet where Earth crops grew twice as fast, and alien plants held the secrets to curing diseases that had plagued mankind for centuries. Elena walked along the stone pathway that connected the research facilities to the main settlement. Around her, the sounds of a thriving community filled the air. Children laughed as they played in the parks between the living quarters. Market vendors called out their daily specials. The hum of machinery mixed with the chirping of earth songbirds that had adapted perfectly to this new world. 15,000 humans called Harmony Station home, and they had built something beautiful here. Captain Rex Morrison stood at the edge of the settlement, watching the horizon through his binoculars. As head of colony security, Rex had served in the border wars against human pirates before accepting this peaceful assignment. He had thought his fighting days were over. The biggest threats on Harmony Station were usually equipment failures or the occasional wild animal that wandered too close to the farms. Rex preferred it that way. After 20 years of military service, he enjoyed the quiet life of protecting farmers and scientists instead of shooting at other humans. Little Amy Chen ran through the crystal gardens, chasing butterfly-like creatures that glowed with soft blue light. At 8 years old, Amy was part of the first generation of humans born on Harmony Station. This alien world was the only home she had ever known. Her parents, both engineers who maintained the colony's power systems, often said that Amy was more at home among the crystal trees than most adults who had come from Earth. She spoke to the alien plants as if they were old friends, and somehow they seemed to respond by growing more beautiful around her. Professor David Kim worked in his laboratory, studying samples of alien microorganisms that could potentially revolutionize human medicine. His team had made breakthrough discoveries about alien biology that promised to extend human life by decades. The peaceful nature of their work had made them forget that the universe might contain threats beyond their imagination. David and his researchers focused on creation and healing, never considering that somewhere among the stars, other forms of life might view humans as nothing more than an infestation to be removed. That peaceful morning changed when the colony's deep space sensors detected something that made the monitoring technicians stop their casual conversation and stare at their screens in confusion. Massive objects were moving through the outer system, objects that did not match any known human ship design. The energy signatures were unlike anything in Earth's databases. Whatever was approaching Harmony Station was large, fast, and completely alien. Rex received the alert while making his morning rounds. He rushed to the communications center where technician Paula Santos was trying to establish contact with the unknown vessels. Her face was pale with worry as she repeatedly transmitted standard first contact protocols. The speakers remained silent except for the hiss of cosmic background radiation. Rex studied the sensor readings and felt his old military instincts awakening. The approaching ships moved in formation patterns that reminded him of predators circling their prey. The first response from the alien ships was not words or radio signals, but something far more disturbing. A presence pressed against the minds of every human on Harmony Station simultaneously. It felt like cold fingers reaching into their thoughts, examining their memories, judging their worth. The telepathic contact brought with it emotions that were not human: contempt, disgust, and something that could only be described as the desire to cleanse. Elena dropped her research samples as the alien thoughts invaded her mind. The mental voice that spoke to her carried the authority of absolute certainty and the coldness of infinite space. The voice identified itself as Commander Zektar of the Void Hunters, and it delivered a message that chilled her to the bone. Humans were parasites who had infected sacred space. They had built their colony on ground that belonged to beings far superior to their primitive species. They had exactly one solar rotation to evacuate or face elimination. Rex tried to organize a diplomatic response, but the aliens cut off all mental communication after delivering their ultimatum. He immediately activated the colony's emergency protocols and sent a priority message to Earth, knowing that it would take 6 months to reach home through conventional faster-than-light communication. The quantum communicator could send the message instantly, but it could only transmit short bursts of data. Rex composed a brief warning about the alien threat and transmitted it toward Earth before turning his attention to the impossible task of evacuating 15,000 people in 24 hours. Professor Kim worked frantically to understand the alien technology by analyzing the energy signatures of their ships. What he discovered terrified him more than the ultimatum itself. The alien vessels were generating fields that seemed to manipulate the fundamental forces of reality. They were not simply advanced technology, they were science that bordered on the supernatural. The readings suggested that the Void Hunters could literally erase matter from existence, turning solid objects into empty space with no energy release or debris. Amy Chen felt the alien presence differently than the adults. To her young mind, it was like meeting something that hated the very idea of life existing in the universe. She ran to her parents, crying that the angry stars wanted to hurt everyone. Her mother held her close while her father tried to help with the evacuation efforts, but everyone knew that moving 15,000 people off-world in one day was impossible. The colony had only 12 transport ships, and the nearest safe world was 3 days away at maximum speed. Elena worked with the other scientists to gather the most important research data, hoping to preserve humanity's discoveries about this world, even if they could not save the people. She felt a deep sadness knowing that the crystal forests and alien gardens that had become humanity's second home would soon be empty again. As she copied her files, she wondered what the Void Hunters saw in this peaceful place that offended them so deeply. Humans had changed the world, but they had also protected it, studying its life forms and learning to live alongside the native species. The 24-hour deadline passed while the evacuation ships were still loading passengers. Rex stood in the colony's command center, watching the alien vessels move into attack position above Harmony Station. Through his binoculars, he could see the ships more clearly now. They were black crystal constructs that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved without any visible engines, defying physics as humans understood it. Rex activated the colony's defense systems, knowing that their PLAs, plasma cannons and missile batteries were probably useless against enemies who could manipulate reality itself. Commander Zektar felt no emotion as he gave the order to cleanse the infested world below. To him and his species, humans were like bacteria that had learned to build structures, still just bacteria, but now contaminating more space than before. The Void Hunters had encountered thousands of species across the galaxy, and they had eliminated every one that failed to meet their standards of worthiness. Humans, with their short lives and chaotic emotions, clearly fell into the category of mistakes that the universe had made. The attack began without warning. Beams of absolute darkness fell from the alien ships, and wherever they touched, reality simply stopped existing. Buildings, people, plants, and even the ground itself vanished as if they had never been. The weapons left perfectly spherical voids in their wake, empty spaces where nothing could exist. There was no explosion, no heat, no debris, just the conversion of matter into nothingness. Rex watched in horror as entire districts of Harmony Station ceased to exist. The evacuation ships tried to launch, but the reality-warping beams found them before they could escape the atmosphere. Thousands of people disappeared in seconds, leaving no trace that they had ever lived. Rex sent one final message toward Earth before the command center was consumed by the spreading void. His last words were a warning that humanity faced an enemy that could erase them from existence itself. Elena held Amy Chen in her arms as the darkness approached their location. The little girl looked up at her with trusting eyes and asked why the angry stars wanted to hurt them. Elena had no answer except to promise that someday someone would remember what had happened here. The void beam found them a moment later, and Dr. Elena Vasquez, little Amy Chen, and the crystal gardens of Harmony Station became nothing more than empty space floating in an alien solar system. Commander Zektar surveyed his work with satisfaction. The human infestation had been removed cleanly and efficiently. The planet could now be prepared for settlement by a species worthy of inhabiting such a strategically important world. He ordered his fleet to continue toward the next human colony, confident that these primitive creatures would fall as easily as their predecessors. The Void Hunters had eliminated many species before, and humans would be just another footnote in their expansion across the galaxy. The human response. 6 months later, Admiral Sarah Brooks stood in the emergency session chamber deep beneath the Earth Defense Headquarters in Geneva. The quantum communication from Harmony Station had arrived that morning, carrying Captain Morrison's final warning in compressed data bursts that painted a picture of horror beyond anything in human experience. Around the table sat the leaders of humanity's far-flung colonies, their faces grim with the knowledge that an alien enemy had just announced itself by committing genocide against 15,000 innocent people. Admiral Brooks had served in the military for 30 years, rising through the ranks during humanity's expansion to the stars. She had commanded fleets against human pirates and mediated disputes between competing colonies. She had always believed that when humans finally encountered alien intelligence, it would lead to a golden age of cooperation and shared knowledge. The reality was far darker than her worst nightmares. The sensor data from Harmony Station showed weapons that violated every law of physics she understood, used by beings who saw humanity as nothing more than a pest to be exterminated. Dr. Marcus Webb entered the chamber carrying a sealed briefcase that contained humanity's most classified secrets. For 15 years, Webb had directed Project Prometheus, a research initiative so sensitive that only a handful of people knew it existed. While humanity publicly pursued peaceful exploration and scientific advancement, Project Prometheus had quietly prepared for the possibility of contact with hostile alien intelligence. Webb had hoped his work would never be needed, but the destruction of Harmony Station had proved that his paranoia was actually wisdom. General Liu Jiang studied the tactical analysis of the alien attack, searching for weaknesses in an enemy that seemed to possess godlike powers. Jiang had built her reputation as humanity's greatest military strategist, able to find winning solutions even when facing overwhelming odds. The reality-warping weapons of the Void Hunters presented a challenge unlike any she had encountered, but Jiang refused to accept that any enemy was truly invincible. Every technology had limitations, and every species had blind spots that could be exploited by a sufficiently determined opponent. Webb opened his briefcase and placed a series of data tablets on the table. The information contained within them represented humanity's secret preparation for exactly this scenario. For 15 years, the brightest human minds had worked in hidden facilities, developing weapons and technologies that pushed the boundaries of known science. Project Prometheus had been funded by every human colony, though most contributors believed they were supporting theoretical research into advanced physics. The truth was far more focused and deadly. The first revelation was the existence of quantum torpedoes, weapons that could strike targets instantaneously across interstellar distances. While the aliens had faster-than-light travel, they stayed. Moved through normal space during combat. Quantum torpedoes could hit them before they even knew they were under attack. The second technology was reality anchors, devices that could stabilize local spacetime and prevent the reality-warping effects of alien weapons. The third breakthrough was psi-blockers, electromagnetic shields that could protect human minds from telepathic manipulation and control. Captain Jessica Torres received her new assignment with a mixture of excitement and terror. She would command the UES Retribution, the first ship built using Project Prometheus technology. Torres had earned her reputation commanding deep space exploration vessels, but the Retribution was built for a very different purpose. The ship bristled with experimental weapons and defensive systems that made it more powerful than any vessel in human history. Torres knew that the lives of every human in the galaxy might depend on how well she and her crew performed in the coming battle. The construction of humanity's response fleet took place in secret shipyards scattered across the solar system. Every human colony contributed resources and personnel to the effort, driven by the knowledge that they might be the next target of alien genocide. The ships being built looked nothing like the sleek exploration vessels that had carried humans to the stars. These were weapons of war, designed by a species that had finally learned the universe contained enemies who would show no mercy. Admiral Brooks established contact with the few alien species that humanity had encountered during its expansion. The Centauri Trade Federation and the Aquatic Republic had maintained peaceful relationships with human colonies for decades. When Brooks showed them the sensor data from Harmony Station, their responses revealed that the Void Hunters were known throughout this region of the galaxy. They were a species of fanatics who believed that only perfect beings deserved to exist, and they had destroyed dozens of civilizations over the millennia. The alien allies provided crucial intelligence about Void Hunter weaknesses. Despite their advanced technology, the reality-warping ships required enormous amounts of energy to maintain their dimensional manipulations. They were vulnerable during the charging cycles of their primary weapons, and their telepathic coordination could be disrupted by specific electromagnetic frequencies. Most importantly, the Void Hunters had never faced an enemy that could strike back at interstellar ranges while simultaneously protecting themselves from reality manipulation. Dr. Webb worked 20-hour days to complete the final preparations for humanity's counterattack. The quantum torpedoes were loaded with exotic matter that would cause massive gravitational disruptions when they detonated. The reality anchors were calibrated to human brain patterns, creating fields of stable spacetime around each warship. The psi blockers were tuned to the specific telepathic frequencies that the Void Hunters used for communication and coordination. Humanity was about to teach the galaxy that some species were dangerous precisely because they appeared weak. General Zhang developed the tactical plan for humanity's response. Rather than meet the aliens in direct battle, human forces would strike simultaneously at multiple Void Hunter facilities across known space. Intelligence gathered from allied species revealed the locations of the aliens' primary shipyards, command centers, and the home world where their leadership made decisions about which species deserved to exist. Zhang's plan would demonstrate that humanity had evolved beyond the primitive creatures the Void Hunters remembered. Captain Torres stood on the bridge of the Retribution as the human fleet prepared to launch. Around her, 50 of the most advanced warships ever constructed by human hands powered up their exotic weapon systems. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy entire star systems, and together they represented the focused anger of a species that had been pushed too far. Torres thought about the children who had died on Harmony Station, and she felt no sympathy for the enemies they were about to face. The quantum torpedoes launched first, crossing impossible distances in zero time to strike Void Hunter facilities throughout the galaxy. The aliens had no warning and no defense against weapons that ignored the normal flow of space and time. Their shipyards exploded in chain reactions of exotic matter, their command centers were vaporized by gravitational implosions, and their homeworld's defense grid was disabled before they could mount any organized response. The Void Hunters learned what it felt like to be helpless victims of a surprise attack. Commander Zektar felt fear for the first time in his species' ancient existence as reports flooded in from across Void Hunter space. The primitive humans had somehow developed weapons that surpassed anything in the known galaxy. Their attacks showed tactical knowledge of Void Hunter society and strategic thinking that implied a sophisticated intelligence network. Worse, the reality anchors around human ships prevented the Void Hunters' primary weapons from functioning, leaving them vulnerable to conventional attacks from enemies they had considered beneath notice. Admiral Brooks watched the battle reports with grim satisfaction. The human fleet had achieved complete tactical surprise, and the Void Hunters were retreating from every engagement. Their reality-warping ships were powerful but slow, and they had no answer for quantum torpedoes that could strike them instantly across interstellar distances. More importantly, the psi blockers had neutralized the aliens' telepathic coordination, forcing them to communicate through slower technologies. CAL means that human intelligence could intercept and decode. The final engagement took place in the system where Harmony Station had once orbited. Captain Torres brought the Retribution and its escort fleet to the crystal forests of Kepler 442b, now empty and silent after the alien cleansing. The remaining Void Hunter ships were waiting there, perhaps hoping that the symbolic location would give them some advantage against the vengeful humans. Torres felt a cold anger as she looked at the empty spaces where 15,000 people had once lived their peaceful lives. The battle was brief and decisive. Human quantum torpedoes struck the alien ships before they could charge their reality-warping weapons, while reality anchors prevented any successful counterattacks. The Void Hunters discovered that their supposedly superior technology was useless against enemies who had spent years preparing specifically to counter their advantages. One by one, the black crystal ships that had seemed so terrifying were reduced to debris floating in the void of space. Commander Zektar's final transmission was intercepted by human intelligence as his command ship was destroyed by a gravitational implosion torpedo. His last words expressed disbelief that a primitive species could have developed such advanced weapons so quickly. He died still unable to understand that humanity's apparent primitiveness had been their greatest advantage, forcing them to develop technologies that more advanced species would never have considered necessary. Admiral Brooks addressed the galaxy from the bridge of her flagship as the human fleet secured the former location of Harmony Station. Her message was broadcast on all known frequencies and translated into every major galactic language. Humanity announced that they were no longer the weak explorers who could be easily eliminated by superior species. Any civilization that chose to attack human colonies would face the full military might of a species that had learned to fight back with technologies that transcended conventional understanding of physics. The aftermath of humanity's victory sent shockwaves throughout galactic civilization. Species that had remained neutral during the Void Hunter expansion suddenly sought defensive alliances with the humans who had achieved the impossible. The Galactic Trade Federation invited humanity to join as a senior member, acknowledging that the balance of power in known space had shifted dramatically. Younger species looked to humanity as proof that determination and ingenuity could overcome any technological disadvantage. Dr. Webb stood in the memorial garden that was built where Harmony Station had once thrived. The crystal trees had been regrown from samples preserved in human databases, and the settlement was slowly being rebuilt by volunteers from across human space. A monument at the center of the garden listed the names of all 15,000 people who had died in the alien attack, including little Amy Chen, whose innocent question about the angry stars had become a rallying cry for human resistance. The galaxy had learned a crucial lesson about humanity. They appeared weak because they valued peace and cooperation over military might. But when threatened with extinction, humans possessed the capacity for innovative violence that surpassed anything that older species had developed during their long evolution. The Void Hunters had made the mistake of assuming that primitive meant helpless, and they had paid for that error with the destruction of their entire civilization. Captain Torres accepted her promotion to Admiral and took command of humanity's new deep space defense fleet. The ships under her command patrolled the borders of human space, ensuring that no other species would repeat the mistake made by the Void Hunters. Her crews were trained to respond to any threat with overwhelming force, carrying weapons that could eliminate entire enemy fleets before they could mount effective attacks against human colonies. The message was clear throughout the galaxy. Humanity had evolved from peaceful explorers into something far more dangerous. They remained committed to cooperation and scientific advancement, but they would never again be vulnerable to species that mistook human decency for weakness. The survivors of Harmony Station had been avenged, and their sacrifice had transformed humanity into a force that commanded respect among the stars.